Good evening, everyone. I'm First Selectman Monica McNally, and I would like to call this special meeting of the Henley Homes and Royal Building Committee to order at 5:05. And first item on the agenda is to welcome all of you. I have to say I sincerely thank all of you for stepping forward to do this. I think it's a very important committee, and this project is going to be challenging, but I feel that we have a terrific group formed, and I think you're all going to really enjoy working on this. So I would like to also thank Duke Deneen, Kip Coons, and Rusty Schreiner for coming with us this evening. They have been very involved with the Oxbridge Committee, and they will be helping us later on in the meeting. I also want to recognize Mike Lynch, our Facilities Director, and I want to also recognize and acknowledge Kate Bush, our Town Administrator, and Linda O'Leary, who works in the First Selectman's office and will be very, very helpful for you when it comes to minutes and filing agendas and things like that. She's a whiz at all of this. So I thought to kick off the meeting, we could go around the room, you could go around the room and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves and maybe why you want to be on this committee. So, Jameson, can I start with you?
Jameson Riley, I think I've now met most of you in the room. I have 2 kids in the school system, both currently at Holmes. I know part of this project has to do with Holmes, but I just wanted to be involved with the general education side of things because I have kids in the system and in Darien schools. I've gotten more involved. I'm on the Darien RTC now as part of the comms team. I joined that about a year ago. So I just wanted to do something that's not politically motivated, but still involved with the town. And this was a good opportunity for that. And my family runs a Volvo dealership in Stamford and Mazda as well, so I've been in this area since I was born. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Looking forward to working with everyone.
Passing the torch to me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Frank Schuster. I also have kids in town. I grew up in the construction industry about 20 years, did everything from labor to executive, and mostly at the end built schools in the Bronx, New York City, all nonprofit, ground ups. Thought I could help with my past history and decided to interview. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Chris Price. I'm a partner at Goodwin Procter, which is an international law firm. I practice primarily in the area of commercial real estate finance, development, joint ventures. I had kids in the school system only through elementary school. Then they went to St. Luke's in New Canaan and away. My kids are all now grown and in the workforce. And honestly was looking for an opportunity to do something where I could give back to the town. That's been really, really good to us. I'm, a year or so away from retiring full-time practice, so thought I could contribute my background and my skills to something that would be beneficial to the town.
My name is Jill Mccammon. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Ed. I also chaired the Darien High School Cafeteria Building Committee. I got involved with Darien. I have 4 kids in the system, and I got involved because I wanted to say thank you. My oldest is in 8th grade, and my youngest is in 1st grade at Henley. So I will still have a kid at Henley when this project finishes.
Hi, I'm David Martin. I serve on the Board of Finance for the town. Previously served on the Board of Selectmen with both Monica and Kip. Probably the one thing that no one knows about yet is I have a diploma in real estate investment analysis from NYU, and I covered the real estate investment trust industry and the home building industry and all the building products companies for work when I worked on Wall Street.
Hey everyone, I'm Dave Kerwar. I work at Mount Sinai Health System in the healthcare industry, so I'm very much less qualified to be on this committee than you guys are, but I'm looking forward to contributing where I can. I have 3 kids in the school district. We're at Holmes as well. So one that's going to be in kindergarten in 2 years, one that's in kindergarten now, and one's in second grade. So just really looking forward to being able to give back to a community that's done so much for us and my family.
Paul Harding. I grew up in town. I currently work for Yale University. I'm a facilities manager. I have an extensive background in construction with large commercial projects. Particularly, I work for electrical contractors, so mechanical, electrical, and plumbing is my kind of forte. I have 3 kids who will all be going through homes. One is in kindergarten now, so selfishly I have a vested interest in this. You know, like I said, I grew up in town, was on Post 53. My brother-in-law is the director of Post 53, so I feel like I also need to be giving more back to the town. So.
And then we have Sarah Newman. Sarah, are you on the phone?
I am.
Okay, so Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Newman. I'm on the Board of Selectmen, and I'm very excited for this project. I have children that have gone through Henley School, and like many of you, I'm so excited for these projects to happen, and would like to thank everyone in the room for raising their hands for their willingness to step up to do this project. So thank you.
Okay, so the next order of business would be to elect a chairperson for this committee. I am chairing this meeting right now, but this will be, I will be sending it off to the new chair. So do we have any nominations? Joe?
I'd like to nominate Chris
Price.
Price.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations?
Second?
Do we have a second? Okay.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Okay. All in favor?
Oh, boy.
Okay.
That's unanimous.
Aye.
All right. Okay. Chris, I have an agenda for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess first thing is just thank you guys for doing this, and I'm going to be leaning on all of you pretty hard. So please expect that. I'm a big fan of delegation and a big fan of getting people with expertise and views and input to contribute that. So please expect that. One thing that might be helpful, Linda, I know we have the resumes. And we have folks' emails. Would it be possible to just put a contact list together? If people, cell phones, emails, so we all have the best way to contact each other?
Absolutely, we'll do that, and I'll email it out to everybody. You can add it to your binder.
And the other thing, this was really helpful to just hear sort of people's backgrounds, and very comforting to hear how many people have backgrounds in construction, facilities, education, real estate, so that's great. So we've got, I think, people with the necessary skills. I would love to, over the fairly near term, whether we do it as a group or we do it individually, just love to sit down with people and have a cup of coffee and learn a little bit more about each of you, and that would just make the working relationship a little bit better. One thought I had, just because I do still have a full-time day job that can be pretty demanding, is I had the thought about possibly a vice chairman, because there may be times where I'm not able to be at a meeting. Hopefully not. I'm committed to do this and I want to give it 100%, but there may be occasions where I'm either traveling or I get buried at work. So if either any nominations or anybody interested in serving in that role, I would appreciate that.
Nominate Jill.
Okay. Can I second my, can we have a second? Second?
Second it, yeah.
Great, all in favor? Great.
Sarah?
Sarah?
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so
You're in
not
favor?
voting
Okay.
yes, okay.
Yes, I'm voting yes.
Do we have anything to give to Jill now, so she can?
It just hand the paper over.
Here, so now, in the spirit of delegation. Right? Also, I guess we also need a secretary for these meetings to take minutes and to operate this on a formal basis. So do we have any nominations for secretary?
I was going to nominate Sarah Newman.
Hey, Sarah? Does that work for you? Any, is that okay with you?
Yes, it is, thank you.
Great. Any seconds?
I'll
Or
second.
people willing to second that? Great. All in favor? Great.
Sarah, you're the secretary.
All right.
Thank you.
So you're getting all this down, right, Sarah?
No, I'm not.
I'm backing her up
Thank
today.
you.
Any other nominations? Are there any, Monica or Linda, any other positions that we feel like we need to fill at this stage in the process?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. I thought as an agenda item, what we have here, Duke, is if you would maybe be willing to just update people on where the project stands, the building committee charges, bring people up to date so that we're all, I think we've each gotten the PowerPoint that introduced this, and we've now got a binder that's going to give us something to read over the next couple of days. But if you could bring us up to date, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. I also, Jill and I are partners in crime. I am chair of the Board of Ed in town.
Okay.
And, I've been on the board for almost 8 years now, so, and I thought a little bit of history would be good also. So this goes back to, the journey started with a master plan by KG&D going back to 2016. Kind of looked at all our facilities across the whole district. And part of that was to see, number one, what the condition of our facilities are. Are there schools that need to be renovated or rebuilt? And also looking at it in alignment with our enrollment projections as to what our needs are. The good news is, and thanks to Mike Lynch, AKA MacGyver, our facilities have always, over the course of time that I've been on the board, have always been rated as in really good condition. We've got a brand new high school for the most part and a brand new elementary school in Tokenique, and we will shortly have a new Oxridge elementary school. Out of this, there came a need to rebuild Oxridge based on the amount of capital we would have to put into the school to just keep it running on an annual basis without addressing any of what the real educational needs were of the school. It happened also to be the newest of the old schools, so to speak, as they called it, about 50 years old, but it was built at a time where construction was just not all that great. Those of you that have grown up or been in town, we had a few California-type schools throughout town over the years. So in line with the overall plan, we set off to rebuild Oxridge. Part of that was also to consolidate the ELP, which is the Early Learning Program, into Oxridge, was a goal to consolidate that program, and Oxridge being the new school. That's how that played out. But the underlying theme here also, as long as I've been on the board and in town, is getting rid of the portables. The average age of the portables is about 25 years old. They've outlived their usefulness, again, thanks to Mr. Lynch. Over the last couple of years, they're really not used for day-to-day classroom instruction. They're used for other things, music and different things like that. It's interesting that as much as people are calling for the removal of portables, they are going to be removed. It's part of the bigger plan, but they've actually come in very handy over the last 2 years with COVID in terms of our spacing needs and requirements. We would have had to wound up going out and renting portables to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And at the time, there were no portables to be had. So I figured I'd just give a couple of key facts based on the master plan and where we're at. So I think you all know that we've got 7 schools, 1 administration building. The average age of our facilities is 50 years old, with homes being 85 years old. As I said, the age and quality of the buildings is consistent with or better than the other districts in the region, with the high school and Tokenique in superior condition. 4 out of the 5 schools use modular portable classrooms. The average age of those temporary structures is 25 years old. Oxridge was identified to be replaced versus renovated. Costs exceeding $5 million a year were identified to just keep the building running. So the goals were developed to build a new Oxridge Elementary School. Of course, the goal was to build on site while keeping the school in session, because we have no swing space in the district whatsoever. Tokenique is maxed out. Out of the 8 locker pods in the high school, they've all been converted to classrooms. So we've never truly built a school with swing space, capacity, or flexibility. And that was one of the goals when we started Oxridge, was to build in some forward-thinking capacity and not value engineer the building, so that we had the ability to have space. We're a destination, you know, our enrollment has been steady with upticks, so that was part of the goal. Consolidate the ELP program, remove the portables, and then incorporate a project that's been worked on is the Library Reimagined project to create a learning commons and more flexible learning space in the libraries. And then as part of that, the board went down the path, and the Facilities Committee did a lot of this, and they did a great job, was looking at the renovation plans of Hinley, Holmes, and Royal, and what was needed there in terms of classroom size, all tied into the overall renovation from a library standpoint. And then as we went down the path and actually did a classroom study, we also realized if we were going to do the renovations, we would pull in all the capital projects that we were looking at going out 5+ years and see where they fit into the schedule. Again, the goal will be moving the portables. The goal is really to do the construction at all 3 of these locations at the same time. I think you'll learn the feasibility of that as you go through your process and start to meet with architects and construction folks. You know, I think the goal was occupancy the start of the 2024-2025 school year, and over the summer of 2024, interior renovations at the 3 schools could take place. I'm sure you've started to read it, but your Bible will be the ed specs. The Facilities Committee, the administration, the Facilities Committee, and the board went through a process of building the ed specs. It's kind of driven by the state in terms of the specifications for building schools, everything from classroom size to office size to hallway size, all that stuff's incorporated in there. So that'll be your guiding document as you go through this project. As the plan comes to life, I think one of the
So
things...
who prepares, just for
Yeah.
informational purposes, who prepares those? Are those dictated or prepared by the state?
They're prepared by
and
the
handed
district.
down?
They're prepared by the district.
Okay, with a
They're prepared
consultant
by
or an
the
expert that
district.
does this stuff, does this for a living? Or?
No, we have our experts in-house. Mr.
Okay.
Lynch is right behind
Awesome.
you there. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
the Tokenique, the high school, Oxbridge, these all built in-house
Okay.
by the administration, lined up with state guidelines and policies.
Got it.
The thing to keep in mind with the ed specs is you'll find, as we did through the Oxbridge project, there may need to be some changes or some tweaks, different things we found out in terms of nursing rooms and different things that we needed around healthcare and stuff like that. So the ed specs can be changed, but any change to the ed specs has to come back to the Board of Education. And the Board of Education has to be presented with the reason for the change in the ed specs and then approved, and then the ed specs are updated.
Understood.
I think the key is, and I think as we go through this, Rusty and Kip have done an incredible job with this book and have some good timelines. But the one thing that I was involved in, and we're kind of on a good timeline right now with kicking this off, is going up and being part of the State Grants and Construction Authority. What we did, I think all 3 of us were actually up there. We went up there and had a pre-meeting just to kind of socialize what we were doing. It was very beneficial to how we manage the whole project on a go-forward basis. You know, we went up there, we had a plan, we knew the process, and I think that helped as then you go back and have very specific meetings once the architect and the construction folks are on board. But that date to keep in mind is Thursday, June 30th of this year, that grant application has to be put in to the state. And I think at this point, the state will figure out, based on finances and everything else, what our actual reimbursement rate will be based on reimbursable, what they consider reimbursable space and expenses. I think we're at, I forget, about 11.8. Yeah.
10.78.
10.78 is our reimbursement rate on the eligible expenses on the $63 million appropriation that we got. The other.
I'm sorry, just for informational purposes, the grant, is that the same process that you all went through with Tokenique and with Oxbridge?
Yes.
Similar process, so we have sort of a precedent for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we expecting around something 10.78, or renovations are reimbursed at a different rate?
Well, there's a job, we'll get to that in just a minute,
Yeah.
but you're right, your reimbursement rate under renovations can be higher. However, remember, ineligible costs bring it all out, change it all out. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I think there's been change in who's running that area now in the state government as well. So it's a little bit uncertain as to.
The leadership has changed, but like anything, they really, our experience, they have not missed a beat in terms of working with them. We just went through a couple of weeks of finalizing furniture, fixture, and equipment. They are 3, 4, 5-hour meetings with the state where they go line by line on this stuff and look at what's reimbursable and not reimbursable. But the folks that have been up there for years. They know the process, they follow the process. The architects and the construction firm that we used, and most of the ones that we looked at, are intimately involved in knowing the process and are known by the folks up at that office. So I would tell you it's been somewhat of a seamless process in working with the state. And Mike Lynch knows, and his team, the whole process, along with Jen here at the First Selectman's office, the whole paperwork flow for the process of reimbursement. So that's kind of, I'll pause there for a minute, kind of high-level background. I hope that helps a little bit. You know, the thing about Ox Ridge was it's a tight site, and we had to keep school going while we were in there, but we've worked through it. Mike Lynch and working with Dr. Adley, we can have these schools under construction while school is in session, do what we need to do over breaks and summer holidays. And that's kind of a plan that the administration has come up with behind the scenes. I think that will play out as you bring an architect on board and as you bring a construction firm on board. If you go into the individual charges, we'll start with Hinley real quick. The overall changes, or the charge with Hinley, is the new library, media center, learning commons area, new general music storage, instrumental music rooms, and 2 new classrooms on the second floor. At Hinley, there's some renovations of the first and second floor to expand classrooms, some changes to world language, IDEA classrooms, and other spaces around special ed, SRBI, and some of the speech and psychology offices. Overall, there's some infrastructure and renovation improvements that are built into the plan also. And with Hinley, there is some site and vehicular improvements that need to be included around the bus loop, and potentially a new exit onto Route 1. Move over to Holmes. That is a new 2-story addition on the back. Again, general music, storage, and instrumental music. World languages, 2 general classrooms, some SRBI classroom space, which will be converted from IDA, and special ed spaces. The library and media center remains in place, but with renovations. And then again, infrastructure, renovations, and improvements tied to the overall master plan. And again, some site and vehicular parking improvements there. At Holmes, years ago, the town bought the home and the piece of property that was adjacent to the Holmes school. We did it after thoughtful consideration, and it really became a security issue, and then people having to access their house through our school parking lot. Nothing's been done with that property, but it is there and gives us the ability to do the addition off the back of that. Royal, again, the design concept, existing classrooms 8 through 11 would be demolished, new library, media center, learning commons, new general music, instrument music, and 4 new classrooms. Royal has always had a couple of challenges with size of classrooms. So there are renovations on the first and second floor in terms of expanding classrooms around world language, special ed, speech, and staff workroom. Also, as we open Ox Ridge and consolidate ELP, those ELP classrooms at these schools will be freed up and for the most part be put back to regular education classrooms or other classroom needs. And again, here also some infrastructure renovations and improvements from our capital plan. And then again, here on Royal, they are thinking there may be some further study needed on driving and parking improvements, but there doesn't seem to be too much of an issue there. It's on a light, there's a crossing guard there, but the back of that school will come down, and the library in the front will come down, and the new building would be in the back too. And the portables will all be taken out prior to construction, because once we move into Ox Ridge, we free up classroom space at each of these schools. And it will be up to the administration and the board to look at if there's a need to move a couple of streets to free up space at these schools and use space that would be available at Ox Ridge. Nobody wants to use the word redistricting, but maybe through the course of this project, the good news is the way we've designed Ox Ridge, and with current enrollment projections and ELP projections, there's space up there that we might have to look at moving a couple of streets and having some folks attend school at Ox Ridge. I'm not sure anyone would be so unhappy with attending a brand new school. But it's exciting. This has been, I look at this as kind of a phase, and it really had to start with Ox Ridge. The real push was remove portables, remove portables, remove portables. But until we figured out what our space needs were, consolidating the ELP program gives a lot of benefits financially, and you don't have people running between 3 or 4 schools for these students. From a nursing standpoint, from a supervision standpoint, they're all consolidated into one school, so that helps tremendously. And that kind of set the stage for freeing up classrooms to be able to remove the portables, and then we just took a broader look at what other renovations these schools needed. We did go down the path of looking, are any of these schools really in need of being rebuilt? And part of the master plan was we asked specifically where we could build another new school. The only site that became challenging was Holmes. Hindley you could build on the fields, Royal you could build on the fields. You're really changing the look and feel of those neighborhoods a little bit. But it was determined, and a lot of it with what Mike's done over the years and his team, is that the schools are in good shape. They're sound. They can handle the new HVAC, electrical, and that type of equipment, and security type equipment that Mike has kept up with on a regular basis. So it was really Ox Ridge came to the conclusion that school needed to be rebuilt. And these are renovations that will go out 25 or 30 years in terms of what these schools need. I think the only other thing, the board went through the process with the facilities, with KG&D, with a study, came to the board approved the ed specs. The ed specs go up through the first selectman's office. They were approved, and then the first selectman has the charge for the building committee. So here you sit. Welcome.
Yeah, so where does, I guess that leads to the question about where do things stand, right? So we're just looking at Northeast Collaborative Architects, but what looks like the study and the proposal together.
Mm-hmm.
Have they been, my recollection from my interview was that no one's been formally retained yet? Were these done as by way of proposals or pitches, or where do we stand in the process?
We should probably then go into the next phase, because we can explain that in chronological order, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow, and Rusty and I are going to follow the order in the table of contents. So but before we do that, I want to say the contact list that you asked for, we always have that, and you'll have yours shortly. But I'm going to suggest that you also probably want to consider an ex officio members. They have been invaluable in our committee. Ex officio members, if I were to name them, would be the Board of Education Chair, the Superintendent, Alan Adley. I mean, I have it all written out. You don't have to worry about it. The Director of Facilities, Mike, behind you. The Director of Finance from the district. The Director of, the Principal of Hindley, the Principal of Holmes, and the Principal of Royal. They're going to be critical as ex officio members. We found out that, for example, when we were talking about ideas at Ox Ridge, having Luke Forshaw, the principal of Ox Ridge, in the room, we cut time and tremendously down, making mistakes. And he would say, well, no, we really don't do it that way. We do it this way. Okay, fine, let's change it around. Otherwise, we would have architects drawing stuff that would have wasted time. Same is true with Mike Litch's participation. From the town, you're going to want ex officio members. You're going to want to have Monica, the first selectman, town administrator, Kate Bush, director of finance for the town, director of land use, which is Jeremy Ginsburg, director of public works, Ed Gentile, and you're going to want really the 2 administrative assistants, Linda O'Leary and Karen Dunn. They're going to do the real work for you. But all of these people should be your ex officio members. And you'll probably want to have one member of the PTO from each school as well, to be a communication link with the members, with the parents of that school. Just to give you an idea of the kind of people you should have in on your ex officio member committee?
We had Katie Lublin, who actually applied to be on, not as a parent rep, but just wanted to be on the Oxbridge committee, but she's a parent with young kids up there, and she came on as an alternate, and then when Kip decided to expand the size of the committee for the way we were gonna do the work, which made a lot of sense, Katie came on board, but she was also instrumental in organizing neighborhood meetings with parents and with the community. She was very helpful in organizing presentations. Alan and I went up there, Kip, Rusty, several neighborhood meetings, community. There are neighbors there that don't have kids in the school districts. There were kids, the parents there that are kids out of the school district. So it was very helpful. We did a couple of presentations on site just to let people know what was going on. And then those meetings were critical too as schools started to go over, like, what does the construction site look like? Is there a change to drop off, a change to pick up, a change to busing? So she was instrumental in kind of keeping the neighbors calm that we had a plan. And I will tell you, APO&G, the on-site construction folks were just, great to work with in terms of knowing our timelines, working with Mike on paving of parking lots, lighting, access, fencing, and the other
for the kids.
And security for the kids. And the other fun thing that they came up with up there, which was great for the school, they had a video camera going on 24/7 that the kids could see. And now we could fast forward it and see the school being built in 60 seconds. But plexiglass was built into certain sections of the fencing for the kids to see the overall project. So Luke did a great job bringing the school in to what was going on, and Katie did a great job as a parent there of bringing the parents and the neighbors on board.
How did you, just process-wise, how do you invite these people, get them into do they come to every meeting? Does the whole group come to every meeting?
No.
How do you reach out and ask these people to join? What's the process for?
The ex officio members?
Yeah.
Oh, you can list them in your first meeting. You can decide who they should be, and then you'll just name them, and then they'll be happy to be on your list.
Right.
They don't all come to every meeting, no.
But they're notified of each meeting. They're
Every meeting.
entitled to come to each meeting.
They're entitled to come.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So,
I tried to write that as quickly as I could.
No, I give you a whole list.
Okay.
Don't worry. Where you stand right now is, I should back up a little bit, the Office of School Construction Grants and Review, OSCGR, controls everything that you're going to do. Even if you don't get a dime back from the state, they control this building process.
I'm sorry, who is that again?
Office of School Construction Grants and Review. Okay? In other words, if you want to get anything done, if you want to do bidding, you have to go through them. They have to approve it.
Is
They
it a
have to
state or a
approve-
local? Is it a state or a town
Hartford.
organization?
That's, when Duke was talking about going up and meeting with the state, that's who we're meeting with, okay? They control everything. They control us getting funding back, they control when you can go bid, they will look at your developing, your design development drawings, they'll approve those, they'll go over everything. They'll go over our furniture thing. We had 5 hours of going through every classroom. Well, what's this furniture for? Anyway, so the first thing you have to understand is you want to get the state grant, and you can't move without the state grant, whether you want the money or not. You have to file for a state grant, and that has to be done by June 30th of this year if you want to be on the list to be approved to start your work by January of next year, okay? So the other thing you have to understand is they want, in this backwards world, and this is in the first piece of paper under item number 6, Appropriation and Bonding. It's Kate's memo to our moderator of the town, RTM. The very last paragraph says, specifically, the state requires that for a grant application to be considered, funding must be in place for the entire project, which means that an appropriation request for the full project cost must be approved by the RTM before any contracts are put out to bid. This is completely backwards, I realize. This is what the state requires.
Does the RTM, talking about the grant request, does the RTM or some other town body need to review and approve the grant request before it goes up to the state?
The RTM approves the appropriation, the money. Okay, and in here, there's, in this document, in section 6, there's the two discussions about the RTM approving it. They don't have to approve the grant process, the grant itself, the grant application.
I'm just thinking about whether we need to back, how much do we need to back the timeline up from June 30th?
You have to start now.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Okay, good.
Okay. So in other words, you need to find out through estimates from the architects, which Rusty will talk about, what is the range of cost of these projects? Put them together, because you're going to have 3 separate filings for the state. The state wants to see 3 separate projects filed. You're going to run them as one. But you'll have a total number, let's say it's $70 million. You're going to want the RTM to give you an appropriation for $70 million without having seen a full, design, anything. Now, we did this, and in this section number 6, the very last item in there is the presentation we made to the RTM in June. I suggest you read that when you have a chance. It shows you everything we did from now until June, that you'll be doing also from now until June. Okay. So the appropriations have to be in place before you even go to the state for the full amount. And that means you have to hire an architect, construction manager, you have to work up some estimates of what this is going to be, you have to scope it out. Now, obviously, NCA has already done some of that work, but that's not the final work. Okay.
Do you need to actually select and hire those individuals before you come up with the appropriation, or can they give you examples and then you can interview and hire after you go through the RTM process?
No, you're going to hire an architect and a construction manager right away.
Right away, okay.
Right away. And you're going to get them on board, and either you're going to you might hire NCA as your architect, because they've already done some work.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? And you're going to hire a construction manager. And
What's the process been historically in terms of how you've identified those people?
Rusty will talk about that
proposal.
shortly.
I'll tell you how.
It's all in the sections about construction manager and then architects.
So, quick question, Kip, which document are you referring to? Section 6 for us, and by this is appropriation and bonding authorizations?
What I'm referring to right now about appropriations is section number 6.
No, I know, but
For us,
I don't
it's
know which.
9. Construction manager selection.
Oh, it's in 9. Okay.
Well, 8 is the grant application.
Oh, about construction manager and architects, yeah.
Gotcha.
9 and 10. 9 and 10.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. So, the other thing, what I've included in section 6 then is the memo about what the RTM has to do to pass this resolution, and then the two comments by the head of the finance committee of the RTM when they went to pass these resolutions. And basically, they gave us $63 million without having seen anything.
One finger, you give 63 million?
Just like that.
So what am I showing them? What am I showing the RTM to get $70 million?
Okay, we'll go through that.
'Cause I got a house I got built.
Clearly. What you're going to do is you're going to hire an architect, you're going to hire a construction manager, and they're going to give you some ideas, and they're going to take either it's going to be NCA, and they're going to take NCA's work, or either going to be NCA and they're going to expand on the work they did, make it more defined, or you're going to hire an architect who's going to expand on their work.
And they-
Just DDs, can I get away with DDs, or, I don't need CDs for this?
Not even.
You're in schematic.
You're in schematics.
Yeah.
You're in the schematics.
Maybe in schematic.
And understand too, that whether it's NCA or SLAM or KG&D, and if it's O&G AP, they understand this whole process, so they know the numbers that have to be included in the grant application. So that's part of their, yeah.
What about the RTM approval? I assume it's, obviously, you're talking about approving the
Yeah.
money on schematics, it's not.
Yeah.
we have to-
But they, what the presentation did, and you'll see it in here, is that a lot of them have been through it before, so they understand the process. So, we had a unanimous vote once we made the presentation and explained what the process was and how backwards it was. But they also saw where we were moving with the architect, with the construction manager. And look, the conversation was had also, do we even bother with that June 30th timeline to get the $5 or $6 million on a $63 million project? But it was unanimous that whatever dollars we could get, we should get. And regardless, even if we said, we're gonna fund this 100% by ourselves, they're still involved every step of the way in signing off on everything that we do.
Even if they don't provide reimbursement?
Right, because education is a state agency. They control everything at the end of the day. Okay?
That's the Office of School Construction you were talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they can literally say that school's too big,
Yep.
that school's too small, this renovation makes no sense. I mean,
Yep.
you want anything to add, Mike? Nick?
Yeah, we also, the committee hired a independent, construction cost guy.
Yeah.
Remember the guy from
Owner's rep.
Canada, did everything online?
Colliers.
Right, he checked all of O&G's and SLAM's numbers, to make sure they were accurate. And they also hired a consultant from Colliers who helped us get through the state to make sure that what we submitted was not going to get rejected.
Right, well, you're gonna hire, and that's under section 8, the state grant construction process. You're gonna hire a consultant to help you through that process, who knows how to do it, and he's gonna help organize and bring together the architect's information and the construction manager's estimates, and put it all together.
Would it includes the expediter as well? Or is the GC doing the expediter?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by expediter here.
It's an owner's rep you're gonna hire.
The owner's rep will hire, and they will get the.
And what they'll do is they'll go through this preliminary architectural stuff and start helping you get kind of a ballpark figure that you can start building a budget around. And then when you'll see the process that we used, and it worked very well when we went to look for an architect and a CM, but particularly an architect, because we had them, the finalists, I'll get to it in a minute, do an actual project. And it was invaluable in helping us hone in on that price. We actually started with 60 million and we moved it to 63 on the basis of that.
Right. So, I guess moving away from the last part in that section on appropriation is the presentation we did make to the RTM. And Duke made it, myself, Duke, and Diane Boston. Read it when you have a chance, but I will tell you this. We made the presentation, I think it was about 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes. We asked for questions, waiting for there wasn't a question. The vote was 99-1. 99-1 in favor of giving us $60 million more. We had $3 million already appropriated to start. Okay, so you can do it. And, it's really a question of showing them that you've done all your homework and you're right, here you are right now. And they'll understand that this is a backwards process, that the state mandates you come to them with an unspecified drawn project and ask for the money.
What was appropriated for pre-con on this?
Three, then 60 more. So you may want to do the same way. You need some money up front. Okay, next one will be talking about project timelines.
Project timeline. As is abundantly clear, you're gonna have a lot to do in the next 5 months. And it's well worth the effort and time to put together a timeline. I've just got some samples here to show you. This is kind of the overall timeline of the project that you want to try to hit. It will change the components of it, but it gives you something in the larger scale. We found it very useful to do a Gantt chart as the one you see in here. Very glad to hear, Chris, that you like to delegate out, because that's what we did here. We delegated pieces of this because there's so much going on. You got to have somebody focus in on these things, and we tried to make it as detailed as possible so that everybody knew what the other person was doing, and this allowed us to squeeze under the deadline to get that thing into the state by the end of June. By the way, any of these Excel spreadsheets that you want, we have them so you can take care of.
Who on your committee, just getting down to the weeds, who in your committee did the actual input work creating this stuff?
Well, I developed the actual forms, but it was the whole committee did the input, because everybody had to take responsibility for each little section that they wanted, and whatever they were comfortable with and whatever was needed.
Yeah.
Was this done on projects?
Excuse me?
On projects? The Gantt chart?
There's a project Gantt chart in the front.
Was it done on Microsoft projects or?
No.
No, okay.
No, these are just words. This is all preliminary because then we have to switch over to the whatever programs that the construction manager and the architect use. We then have another Gantt chart, which is a little bit more detailed out. And then the last one,
See, that one came from the person that
the
assisted,
construction, the owner's representative
who
did
helped us
this
with
one.
the grant.
And you need it for the grant too. The last one is what you'll be getting for once construction starts. You get these every month. They're very, very detailed. They're 6 or 7 pages long. So you can track every little piece of the construction that's going on. In terms of, let's see here, project timeline, that's you. Yep.
Okay, the construction timelines are actually 11 pages long, unbelievable in detail. And it's very helpful because you can find anything you want in it. The first page always is a summary of seeing where you are. Then on the state construction grant application, again, as we said, you hire a specialist to help you on this, owner's rep. In our case, I've given you a copy of 2 proposals. One was from Construction Solutions Group, another one was from Colliers. We hired Colliers to help us. These are just for you to look over because they give you ideas of what kind of work they have to do. Then when you go through the process of putting together all the information for the grant application, you will then submit it at the end of June, hopefully. So that's the deadline. And when that's done, or I've included it here, I believe, I think, no, I didn't put it here, but then the state will come back and will award to the various schools that are asking, or districts that are asking for schools in December. And you can see this next sheet shows the Department of Administrative Services, which granted the Darien application for $63 million. And they said, well, your reimbursement rate will be about 10.71%. And then the next page talks about more specifically the grant application. I've concluded 2 pages here with yellow markings on it, which tell you how to figure out how do they arrive at 10.71%. And it's based upon our grand list, our population. Let it be known that I think Greenwich has the lowest reimbursement rate, like 10%. We're about number 2 lowest, and then I think Mccammon follows. Bridgeport, you could imagine, is up in around the 70%, et cetera, et cetera. However, the grant rate's only an indication of what you might get back. Everything has to be considered, whether it's eligible or not. When you get into renovations, they often are figuring out whether this is, are you really renovating or is it something new? And it's a much more complicated process, and you can worry about that later on.
One quick thing, the grant money is not part of your budget.
No.
Not part of the town budget.
No, you have to appropriate money for the whole project.
I see.
And what you get back is merely gravy, if you get it back.
Okay.
I've included 1 page, which is sort of, I call it the state reimbursement for eligible expenditures. I presented this to the Board of Finance, because what I proved here was that we don't get, but at Ox Ridge, because we're overbuilding, we're making schools, classrooms larger than they're allowed by the state, we're gonna get back something less. So I worked up a number that says maybe we'll get back 7.47%. You'll have a different number. It'll all have to be worked out, but it all depends upon what your final design is, what's eligible, what's not eligible.
Sorry, so that's lower than the 10.8% because you
Correct.
made specific construction decisions that were
Correct.
considered not.
We
compliant
made
with state
larger
spec.
classrooms than the state allowed for the number of students. We made extra rooms because we thought we needed expandability.
Got it.
We have a site that, at Ox Ridge, for example, there's just no room to expand outward. Even when the old school's torn down, because that's gonna all be taken over by a bus loop and parking. So, we felt we had to build more space in that school than we had students. And so therefore, we're gonna be penalized by not getting as much money back from the state. But when you're dealing from 10.71 down to 7.47, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You know, make it right and don't have to build again in 5 years.
I mean, we looked at making the school smaller just based on the lot size, but then it just made no sense because they're down the road. It made no sense to add a classroom or two instead of doing it now while we were building the school.
I included the next page, 2 pages, which is a notes from a meeting we had with the OSCGNR in Hartford on June 19th. You can read that at your leisure. It'll give you a feeling for how much the state wants to get into everything you do, and the give and take that we went through.
Are they elected officials?
They're appointed. Or, yeah,
The day-to-day people you work with, like Kermit and Barbara, are state employees.
They're employees.
The guy that heads it up is appointed by the governor.
Got it.
Or the person, yes.
Costa was there, yeah.
Yeah, we see a short list for construction managers. Do you have one for architects too?
We're not there yet.
I'll give it to you in just a minute. And then the very final piece in this section is just showing you that we have, Dr. Adley has to sign off on all these various phases. Again, the district and the committee worked hand in hand on all this stuff. A lot of paperwork. And since you've got basically, from the state's point of view, you have 3 projects. You can imagine the amount of paperwork. But a lot of it's gonna be just the same thing here, but just with a little different stuff here and there.
And I think what was effective when anything came up is being on the Board of Ed like Jill is and sitting on the committee, then Jill can just reach out to myself or Dr. Adley, and it just makes the communication flow a lot easier, saying like, you guys need something approved at the next Board of Ed meeting, we need to get it on the agenda, because we're more worried about you keeping your timeline intact. We can figure our agenda out if we need to get something approved or updated around the ed specs.
You want Rusty to do the next part?
Okay. Once you get started on the state reimbursement, you've got to jump into finding an architect and a construction manager. And I would urge you to do both at the same time or pretty close to one another. You're going to want this construction manager on board because they're going to be really good at helping you estimate the cost that you need to get to the RTM and do it very, very quickly. There are a number of ways to manage a construction process. The one that we feel is the best is a construction manager at risk versus a general contractor. A general contractor, all the subs contract to him, and they give you one price. Construction manager is really working for the owner being the town. And they get paid a fee, and they really look to benefit you and keep your costs down and keep the subcontractors in line. The at-risk part is that there will be a guaranteed maximum price, a GMP. That's what we're doing. The last 2 big projects in town have been GMP. And that's very comforting for everybody to have that done, provided you do it right. On the next page is a list of construction manager at-risk potential candidates that we looked at. The actual number that came in, I think we had more than this. Some of them didn't apply, but there were some more. This list, the proposal, the RFP will be posted. It must be posted to the state website. And there's a portal there that goes directly into these RFPs. And so you're, depending on how busy the construction business is, I mean, you may get lots, you may not get so many, depends on what's happening out there. So, but you don't get to choose, you just hope that the good guys, and frankly, there are just maybe a dozen that do a lot of schoolwork, and you want someone that's done schoolwork, you also want someone who not only has done ground up, but has done renovation work.
Quick question, is there any consideration or desire from anybody in town, BOE or anything, for there to be some sort of uniformity between the schools, being that Oxford was just done and then going into the other ones?
From a design point of view?
Yeah, and just, I guess from a design point of view and functionality point of view is that, you know, we're a different set of people getting involved in
That
this.
gets into the architectural area, but yeah, I mean, this is a brick town.
Might be able to, we're building Oxbridge and making a lot of the mechanical systems, like the alarms, things like, conform to what's in the other buildings.
Okay.
The locks, the type of flooring, things like that. So the new buildings will match in that respect, yeah, but like Russ said, it's brick.
But the idea being that, well, but presumably we want one architect and one CMR for all three.
Yes.
We're not gonna parse it
No
out.
question.
I don't know, compared to
Right.
what the hours we spent on design, because we're building from the ground up, and we looked at everything from barn-like structures to multiple structures to, you know, every different structure on earth in terms of materials and everything else like that. This really, from a design standpoint, you're really adding classrooms, adding music rooms, and you're really in some ways trying to match the brick, match the windows, match the doors, so it's not a lot of design work that comes into play.
Maybe, yeah, maybe what Jameson's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the path of least resistance, the default position, the same, just to use the same person who's doing the Oxbridge job?
Yeah, you have to go out to bid. You
Right.
can't.
You have to go out to bid. We would tell you our point of view about the people that are doing it. We think they're excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've done, ONG-AP joint venture has done the high school.
Middle school.
The middle school, and now they're doing Oxbridge. So they like the town. The reason they like the town is because they say, the professionals in your town work for us. They don't fight us all the time.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I meant, I guess, less from a design perspective as much as a.
Working
every-
relationship.
Yeah, they know who everybody is already.
They do.
But you
Yeah.
have to,
Yeah.
you're required by the state
Gotcha.
to put out an RFP, and you have to probably interview, I would say, at least 3.
Got it.
So you put, you have to first
So you-
post an RFP to.
The first is an RFQ that goes out, request for qualifications. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna send in their cell package, what they've done, who they've done, the fact that they're done on time and budgets and stuff. You're gonna sit down and then say, okay, going through this and the types of stuff they've worked on and the size of things they've worked on and the look and all that stuff, we think these 3 guys or 4 guys or whatever it is, and you will ask them for a request for proposal, an RFP. That's the next one that's in this book. So they will then come back with a separate document that's going to detail out what they think the costs are. You're going to want to know exactly who they're going to put on the job. A lot of times they try to avoid that, but you want to know and you want to see them. And you want to hear about, on-time performance, on budget performance, the usual stuff. And we put some questions in there, or considerations that we used. Each of the committee members sat through this and graded them based on what they saw, both at the RFQ without the interviews and here with the RFPs.
Did you approve did you approve each of the subs?
No,
We
no.
didn't, but in the agreements in there, we have the right to exclude, for a reason, a subcontractor. Because there are some subcontractors that,
Just to be
You know,
clear, the subs aren't hired yet.
correct.
No.
Okay,
Sounds
No,
like
no.
no one's hired yet.
so,
The subs all
We're
bid,
starting from
the
ground
subs
zero.
will bid, and the lowest bidder who's qualified
and since it's the
will be
CM
taken.
bid, the construction manager will then submit the proposals for approval, and he will then send them to the state, right? The
No.
CM?
So what happens is, once you choose the construction manager, and then the architect provides him with something to work with, and then they'll get through to, probably in design development is when they start really looking who's the good subs, and they will put together their request for proposals. This is the construction manager's to all the subs, and you'll have all the categories covered. And we didn't get that far ahead in here. So you may get anywhere from 2 or 3 subcontractors per category. Let's take steel, to 7 or 8 per category. But they're responding to the construction manager, okay, because they're gonna be working for him.
Right, and the construction manager's making recommendations and
Yes.
vetting out the responses to the.
They will
RFPs.
meet with the finalists in each category and make sure they understand what's expected, because I will tell you, probably a third of the time, they've got to clarify that, even though they've got, at this point in time, drawings and specifications. They miss stuff or whatever.
You sit in on sub meetings?
Excuse me?
Yes,
Sit in on sub
Yep.
meetings?
yes, there's always at least.
Scope review.
It's called
Yep.
scope reviews.
Scope reviews, yep.
When they will
Yep.
go over this.
So we're
And
allowed, we can do.
Yes.
there's
absolutely.
always at least one committee member on every scope review. And it's, it's a long process, 'cause it's about an hour and a half for each scope review. And you just can't do everything,
You mentioned ONG and AP.
That's a joint venture.
So
So
the two
O&G
separate, but they work together, or is
They,
it?
they formed a joint venture. They did it on the middle school, they did it on the high school, and they.
But you had one CM from them?
So
That is the CM, the
This-
joint
the-
venture.
The joint
Okay.
ventures.
Yeah. what happens is O&G is really the construction manager side, the business side.
Got it.
And it's AP Construction
Yep.
who heads up the construction
Got it.
part of it.
Okay.
And they're both out there on the site on a day-to-day basis, and you can reach any of them. And
Does the state either somewhere from encourage to require minority or women-owned
Yeah.
business bids?
Yep.
Yes, that's all part of the process as well.
Yep.
And the construction manager you hire can give you the whole story about that, and how it works.
Construction manager actually has to submit an approval form to the state.
Yep.
So they're aware of the state requirements. They're
Absolutely.
plugged in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And the state,
And then they'll run that with their subs, they'll vet their subs under those criteria presumably.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they have to, for example, if they're a non-union, if the subcontractor's a non-union shop, he still must pay the prevailing wage.
Right.
In the state of Connecticut. And that's audited by the state of Connecticut. So all those documents are very carefully kept.
Where is the engineer folded in? SLAM typically has it in-house.
SLAM will have engineers, we have our own separate one. So you have the construction manager, and you have the architect, and then we have a couple of people, engineers, and SLAM has some of their own.
So you, in addition to SLAM's engineering team, you hired independent engineers?
Yep,
For anything specific or just the overall project?
just overall project.
And geotechnical work,
Yep.
Right.
for commissioning work,
So
for
in
special
theory-
testing.
Yeah, because I didn't see anything about engineering, so we're hiring the CM, we're hiring the
Yep.
architect.
Again,
we're
we
hiring
didn't
engineers.
we wanted to try to get you through the first 6 months
You only
of
gave
hell.
me 3 months to get this done, so I'm trying to.
3 months to get it done. No, but you
That
have
wasn't
consultants.
My question, though, who will submit to the state, because that's a big time issue.
The person you hire.
That's the CM,
The-
construction manager will do to the state, so there's no gap.
The person you hire, well, not the CM, but the person you hire to assist you in this,
Consultant.
in the process.
Consultant will do all the
Consultant.
submissions.
He'll be the lead dog getting that all into the state.
So it's all done in the schedule for
Right,
each
he'll
sub.
be hounding you guys all the time.
Okay, good. That's the time crunch there.
Now, the good news. The contracts. We took nearly a year to redo the AIA contract. AIA stands for American Institute of Architects. Guess who it favors? They've already been redone. If you want to get a little laugh, we'll give you a copy, because attached to it is the markup that's required. And the markup of the original, you can't read it. There's so many cross-outs and changes in it. So basically what we were ensuring happened is nothing can be done without the building committee's approval, the owner's approval, period. It's not the way these are usually set up, but that's the way it is. And we give equal weight to the architect and the CM, which is important. And there's a reason I'm talking about the CM first. They are critical people. There will be 2 documents that relate to the construction manager. One is the A201, which is general conditions, and then the second one is the A133, which is the guaranteed maximum price. All done. It's all done. There's the A133 and then an addendum Exhibit A.
The maximum price won't be available until after all your subcontractors' bid has been done, and accepted, and they actually know what the numbers are. So that'll be done way at the end, before you start work, but it'll be done way at the end.
To make things confusing, the general conditions will also apply to the architect, and the architect has to sign it. Don't ask me why, I don't know.
Contingencies? Contingency?
Yes, again, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but we usually, there's
You
two.
brought up AI.
Two main contingencies involved here. One is the owner's contingency, that we decide what that is. And then there's the construction manager's contingency, which is about 3%. Okay? Again, in the documents, the change we made is we restricted the construction manager's use of the contingency to only 2 items. Lack of coordination between the subs, stuff always falls in between. No, it's not my job, it's not your job, blah, blah, blah. And the other is tied in with material pricing. Any price change that is less than 10%, sorry, no more money. If it's over 10%, they cover it. Same thing with it in the reverse. If the price drops down, we can actually get money back. So that is the construction manager. Any questions on that?
Did you hire the consultant before you hired the
Yes.
CM?
Consultant, architect, CM.
You want the consultant
First.
really quick.
That was the either Colliers or.
Colliers, or we actually have gotten, that was sent to us, a proposal
From ONG
from
alone.
ONG alone.
Oh, okay.
Who for $5,000 said they do all that
They'll
work.
do all
In
that.
addition, so they would wear 2 hats, potentially.
They wear that hat early on, yes.
Right.
But once you file your state grant, then that job is over.
Yeah, and they really can't get out of it. You hire them first and make them build it, then it's their fault.
But don't hire them to be your contractor. They'd really be upset.
So again,
Do
just,
the posting of the process around RFQ and RFP, obviously that's for the construction manager. Do you do something similar with the architects and the consultants?
yes, we'll get,
Okay.
it's the exact same thing, basically. You have to post it.
You have to post it, okay.
It gets out there. The section 10 is all about the architect. It's a 1-stage project with 2 steps, if that makes any sense whatsoever. An RFP will go out explaining what it is. Again, we've developed this RFP, and it's out there, and so it's already been pretty much done. You can adjust it somewhat to your schools. Each of the architects got 25 minutes and 25 minutes of questions, and here's just some of the things that we wanted to have them consider. Once we decided upon the finalists, we think it was 3, we hired them all to do a project, and that's what this preliminary site building conceptual design. And there's a reason for that. You're gonna find out really quickly who's really interested, and who's gonna put the time in, and we paid them. Paid them $10,000 apiece. Doesn't cover their costs, but it's something. And you'll find out quickly who digs in, who understands the project, who's gonna come up with wild glass and whatever, and who's gonna come up with brick. It's a very useful project. You'll also learn a lot more that will help you in the development of the final design, because every one of them, even the 2 that didn't get the job, came up with some really pretty cool ideas that can be incorporated at the end of the day. And they have a time pressure, but you want to see how they handle that, because you need to get that architect's attention and time. This is Darien. It's a great project to have. you know, when they put their sell sheets out later on, and they want it. But you want to make sure that they are going to put the time in once they get it. That's the key. And again, like the CM, you want to see the people that are going to work on your job and interview them and all that, just to make sure. So this was the project that we had them do. And we didn't give them much time to do it. And they all came in with their staff that we would have and made the presentation, and then we met.
I will add to this, Rusty, that it was from these, they're called charrettes, these $10,000 exercises. But they came back, we asked them, you'll find it in the specifications here, which Rusty put together, that give us an estimate of what it's gonna cost. You know, this way, that way. And it was from those estimates that we compiled 3, that came up with our number that went to the RTM. So that's, you know, that was answering the question of how do we ever find out that number. And of course, then we had our professional colliers helping us verify that number or moving it into the right categories for the state grant.
Then if you have your CM on board quickly, they too can add to it. So your number becomes a little bit more meaningful than. You know, it's with an owner's rep, it's really the individual, not necessarily the. He was good. He was right on top of it and dug in, and you know, he obviously wanted us to hire him for the whole project.
Right.
One of the things that we're looking at right now for you guys is, given that you've got 3 different projects going on at the same time, would you benefit from having an owner's representative, or just to do the whole across the board? So this is somebody outside the CM, outside the architect, because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. There may be smaller projects, but I guarantee you they'll have the same amount of complexity, if not more, because doing renovation and construction on top of it is more difficult than a ground up. So we're going to have a point of view on that for you probably next week sometime to look at, I mean, to consider. But it might be something you want to do, because there's detailed stuff that comes up all the time.
So are you recommending that we do this, given that this charrette phase, given that this is not as much of a design project, this is, you know, a lot of the materials will be, and a lot of it will be kind of predetermined, and we sort of already know what the libraries, for example, would feel like. Do you feel like it's an important step as we go through this process, in the same way it was for you all when you did the Oxbridge?
I don't think we do. I think that there you're designing a whole new school.
Yeah.
On a very tight site. Here you're doing add-ons,
Right.
but you have probably the more complex add-on is the library media center, which you've already kind of designed as a district, right? So it's replicating that, and you have classrooms you're trying to expand. We think that the architect's side here is, from a design point of view, is less important than it would be at Ox Ridge. But that's why maybe the NCA people who have already done all this work is a favored, would be a front runner here. I don't know. I don't know anything about them.
We got into a lot of where I think the work that's been done is, we know where on the building this has to be done. And I don't think that'll change. Maybe the look and the feel, a little bit of change, or it'll move a little bit to the left or the right. But I mean, a bulk of the time was spent at Oxbridge is, where do we put this building? You know, and from, you know, keeping part of the existing building and building new around that, to 2 separate buildings, one for ELP, one for the school, to, you know, can we do it while keeping the school in place? Can we knock down part of the school, bring in more portables? You know, and that's how we came up with the phased approach of, we'll have the elementary school up and running by June, and then the minute those kids are out of school, that building starts to come down and they start to build the gymnasium and the cafeteria and all that type of stuff. So that turned out to be a phased
Your
project.
projects are very similar to the middle school, which I chaired. We actually changed the project architect, not the architectural firm, about a year in, because what we needed was not all the design and all that stuff. We needed someone who was very familiar with construction and could work very closely with the construction manager Because really, the task there, as it is with yours, is to blend it in with the existing school so that it looks like it actually was built at the same time. So it's, you know, the creativity is not nearly as important.
I think that one of the big project problems here is all of the MEP work. This is really, and Frank, we talked about that earlier on your interview, but I mean, the integrating the mechanical.
All the as-built would be there, right?
Pardon?
You promised all the as-built would be there.
No, talk to Mike, he can tell you how many as-built are not out there. We had a bet, Mike, he wouldn't take up the bet.
We just digitized all of our drawings last year, so we could get you access to the files.
That'd be good, yeah.
Want to see anything, or for the architects go to start designing?
Would the state require safety mitigation plans for approval because it's during an active school?
It's part of your submittal to
It'll
them.
be all part of that, okay.
Yeah.
And our existing CM was very, very good at that.
Yeah, that's-
Very good at that.
If you go up to Oxford and you see where the construction is and where the construction fence is and where the school is, you've got about that much space.
Right.
You
It's
know,
gonna
which
do it
is,
in one night.
Yeah, it's one of the tightest sites I've ever seen, so.
They should have them do this.
From a, just a workflow perspective, how did you structure the committee? We have town employees, we have school employees. Who wrote the RFPs? We had a lot of talent on your committee.
Kate Bush
Okay.
puts out the RFPs to both, I mean, she's the ultimate
Yep.
person that'll put out the RFPs to the architects and to the CMs.
But they were cribbed from Rusty's
Middle school.
stuff.
Middle school
and
project.
from Middlesex, and some stuff that Paul Engelman had done for Tokenie,
Okay,
and some stuff I had from New York,
okay,
but it was probably 80% Rusty's stuff.
okay,
And then
Uh-oh.
Kate kind of put it all together.
okay.
That's why it didn't work,
We've
right?
yet to
exactly.
talk.
Oh, not sure if that's a compliment or
You
not.
have do you have your fee in here and
Yeah,
slide
right.
13?
A couple of other things, there's a little diagram there, architectural considerations. Again, it varies just what we're talking about on the project itself. User needs of paramount importance. The users are the students and the staff of the school. Operations, Mike, it will be very involved because it's got to run and continue to run. Construction dollars and schedule, obviously important. And aesthetics. And I put all four of them down because too many architects focus in on that lower right-hand box. Again, some of the things we looked at with the rating of the architectural firms. And then you have the B101, which is the agreement with the architect, again, much like the CMs. It's been completely redone. Normally, architects control the projects, not if you want to get it done on time and in budget and everything else. So this is also set up so that you guys representing the town are going to have the yes and no's on virtually everything. And this is what the budget from your architect will look like. You want to have it broken down, and you want it in writing and in detail. The last couple of things, the first one.
Did the architects suggest engineers, or did you separately?
They
have their own.
They have their own.
They have their own in-house.
They'll have they have a list of consultants from
Right.
engineers to specialists in other areas.
Right.
What was Landgren? They were in
Yeah.
geothermal.
Geothermal.
They have geothermal.
Soil
Some of them have their own internal.
Okay.
Right, Langdon was the soil scientist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Geothermal, yeah, like,
Yes, geothermal.
we
And
find
they were
out,
Ty and Bond, right?
Ty and
Yes.
Bond was,
Here's the question.
we hired Ty and Bond
They
for,
did
Who
traffic.
stamped your drawings? Who's the engineer of record?
is it Lamont?
Yeah.
Jake,
Was
Jeff
that a
Lamont.
SLAM or was
No,
that
it's
yours?
SLAM.
Slam has to
Slam.
sign it.
Slam has to sign it.
This is just one page, this little mouse-typey thing that you'll be getting every month. The cover, the first page will be really the project, the real key items on the project. This is very long and voluminous. We usually have a summary page to go on. And the last in this project is the construction drawing sequence, for those of you who have not participated in projects. The architect will develop a program first, basically how many rooms, what size are the rooms going to be, of all types, and that will be the program in which the design will be gone against. Then they will come up with conceptual drawings. These are very simple, on-site type of drawings until you find one that you like, and then you'll go into schematic, which is a little more detail. The DD, design development, that's when you're really starting to get down into detail. And once that's done, that's a critical step, is design development. You will then start the construction drawings. Submittals, once the construction drawings are done and they're used to get the bids from all the different subcontractors, and once you approve the subcontractors are approved, the subcontractors will do their own drawings, and they have detail of, if they're the plumber, they've got the real detail. Now, all of this is electronic now. If you're interested, you can go on and look at this stuff. It is kind of amazing. You can get 3D drawings of what it'll look like if you pull down a ceiling tile and the pipes and the, if you're really bored, you can look at those. You will then be getting RFIs, requests for information. So no matter how good the drawings are and specifications, there are always questions that come up. And the construction manager will submit to the architect RFIs, you'll see lots of them, for clarification or something new, or there's a problem or whatever. Be careful with those if they're tied in with a proposed change order. Those are the enemy to the budgets. And then at the end, you're going to want to put in your contract as-built drawings. That may sound pretty obvious, but I can tell you lots of projects that don't have them. And it creates a problem down the road.
The state requires them now.
Jill, you know that.
I do know that.
The state, it's now required by the state. It's getting late, so let me carry you quickly through the last couple real quick. Section 11 is about invoice approval, which we don't have to go into too much detail, but it starts out with a memorandum that we received in July of 2019 from the financial director here at the town, Jen Chernesky. She was asking the right questions. We then responded by putting together a construction site subcommittee, and then we had a whole little table of how we approve invoices, some coming from the construction and some coming from our outside consultants. You can read that over at your pleasure, and I put in the back an example of an invoice recently from our architect. You can see how detailed that is. The last item is really project management, and we're being very simple here. We're just saying that the project management is really three phases. One, it's your building committee. That's why we gave you a sample of an agenda. Whenever you meet, you have to have an agenda and minutes from that. But you're the first level of project management. The second level of project management is really from the construction manager, and every month we get what's called a monthly progress report. I gave you a couple of pages from that to let you see what it is, including the table of contents. It includes pictures, it includes the 11 pages of the Gantt chart of projects underway. It also includes other things, including trade allowances, and you can look it over, including there's always a summary data update of where we stand with our contingencies and where we stand with what we're spending and how far along the project is. I've given you a sample of what it's called. The third thing is the owners, architect, and contractors meeting. The OAC meeting, these are twice a month. These are kind of detailed meetings. Maybe one or two people from the committee will attend to. These are all done virtually, by the way. They'll take about an hour. We go over the nitty-gritty stuff that's going on. So, but those are the three basic levels of management for the project management. I've included in the very last page the current status of where we stand, and I think this will show you the various contingencies that are in the box at the bottom. We have our owner's contingency. We have a thing called an allowance, and then we also and you can see where we spent against them so far. So right as of the date of this report, which was the 17th of December, we have $3,300,000 of contingency reserves left out of a total, which we started with, of around $4 million. So this is the kind of stuff you keep track of. I'm sorry, I don't want to waste any more time.
One other quick thing, it's not really something you have to worry about for a while, but we formed a construction oversight subcommittee. It's limited to 2 or 3 people who have familiarity with construction and the problems that come up on a day-to-day basis. And they're tasked with solving problems, making decisions in between the building committee meetings, or something, concrete truck's up ready, comes up to the site, is ready to pour, and something doesn't look right, you need a decision, boom. And should be someone that's available most of the time, because this stuff comes up. But you don't have to worry about that, but just so you know, it's something you might want to do later on.
Just sort of thinking of next steps, I guess, does every meeting need to be a formal meeting with everybody, attendance and notice? And can we do like informal working groups? I mean, I was sort of thinking while this, go ahead.
The Freedom of Information Act requires that if you have a quorum or more, you have to have a noticed meeting, and you have to have it recorded.
Okay.
Whether it be video recorded or at least minutes be taken.
Yeah.
If you have less than a quorum, I'll call them the small working groups, which in your case is 9. So any group of 4 can work at any time. They don't have to be notified. They don't have to be under the Freedom of Information requirements.
Got it.
Okay. So what we did is we broke up into, we had a committee of 10. We broke up into groups of no more than 5, and we would work on part of the design project here or this group there, and that's how we did it.
Yeah, and I'm not, thinking of end running anything, but I'm sort of thinking in terms of, I'm just, as this whole process this evening was going on, thinking through how to attack this, and obviously looking for input on this. Read the Bible that you gave us, because it looks like it's got a lot of great information, but, it's kind of a next step, getting together and basically putting together a to-do list with priorities, and then who's best suited to lead the charge on each of those. So it's not everything is, it's kind of a subcommittee concept, not everything is everybody.
Yep. You should.
But, who is best suited to review the RFQ for the GC or the consultant? Right. What do we have to do as a first step? But I'm sort of thinking almost like it's more of an organizational to-do list.
No question.
Who's best suited to do what kind of thing, but it sounds like that's gotta be
Quick.
quick, A, and B, a formal meeting, and if you guys are willing to participate in that, just because you've got the experience, if we can take advantage of that, that'd be awesome. But-
You should think about a cadence of meetings, and just put out a calendar for the next 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
Just because the public will be very interested in this, so you've
Okay.
got to think about that. It's,
Okay.
if you do the work in the subcommittees like we did, you've got to come back and report at the committee.
Right.
There's usually a report that goes to the Board of Ed on a monthly basis also, in terms of how the project is going. But you're going to have a lot of parents and folks involved from the public standpoint that are going to want to know how this project is moving forward.
Are
So-
meetings publicly noticed such
Yes.
that
Yes.
citizens can attend?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And Chris, you have representatives, you have a Board of Finance representative, you have a Board of Ed representative, you have a Board of Selectmen representative. Each one of those will be reporting to those groups, and the community watches those groups themselves. So the information will be disseminated.
Got it.
And Randy, are you still here? Okay, you
Yes,
do?
I am.
Okay, so you have one more member on your committee, Randy Giraldo, who is on the Oxbridge committee right now.
Okay, great.
And so I thought Randy, can you just speak to the group? Everybody already did their introductions, but maybe tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're doing on Oxbridge right now?
Sure, happy to do that, and sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but yeah, so 10-year resident, town, 3 kids, well, 2, 1 at Middlesex, 2 at Oxbridge right now. And it's been a pleasure to work with the guys that have been kind of leading a lot of the guidance on this job. my role has been, was really heavy, we all really pitched in at the beginning in kind of vetting and picking the architects and the construction managers. Those are two huge steps up front. But then one of the part that I took leadership on was coordination with all the different town administrative bodies from a permitting and a overall approval perspective. So health department, planning and zoning, building department in particular, among others, just to make sure they all had all their questions answered and signed off on things so that we can commence. And beyond that, really was kind of a part of this, still am part of this construction oversight committee that Rfis talked about. That background in construction management when I started my career, so I speak that language. But yeah, I mean, I think that the Bible that I think everyone's looking at in the room is critical. We can really lean on all the different Oxford stuff that took place, and I think that was a good idea there. I think what we really need is a quarterback. I think Kip, everyone really chipped in, but without Kip running the whole thing, it would have been a disaster. So, really assigning the roles and responsibilities is huge. We got to do that up front, and we need a leader here that's going to, just kind of run it and corral everybody and keep us all on schedule, et cetera. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for now.
Thanks, Randy.
2 things. So, I mean, I guess what is the process for trying to schedule and notice meetings? Is that something that Linda helps
Yes.
with?
Yes.
Linda will help you with
Linda
that.
will
Like
help
if we
with
were to
that.
say, gee, does a week give us everybody enough time with everything else they have going on in their lives to read through the Bible and get together and start thinking about a to-do list and tasks and delegation, et cetera?
Yeah, I think, Chris, you might want to start with, do people want an in-person meeting? Do they prefer a Zoom meeting?
Okay.
Do they like an evening meeting? Is this a good time? Kind of narrow it down there, and then Linda will send out a doodle doc that will.
Okay. What do people think about that? I hadn't even considered that we wouldn't do it in person, but, so sick of Zoom, but, what are people's preferences? Do we have the ability to have some people attend by Zoom if they can't be in person, or is that beyond our technological?
Right now, that's a challenge, but we are working on that. So I would go for in-person, and I think initially, the group, you'll benefit from
that
being in
works.
person.
I won't be here next week, so.
Okay.
In certain of these meetings, especially with the state and stuff, the superintendent has to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And he's well respected up there and well known by what he's done here and in other district that he's been in.
And
So
is there somebody here globally that like let us know, like, oh, if you're gonna do that, you need to have the superintendent, or if you're gonna do that,
well,
you have to get.
he'll sit in on most of these meetings to begin with
Yeah.
as an ex officio, as will Mike.
Yep.
And so the architects especially and the construction folks from a submittal standpoint, they know where the super needs to be, what the super needs to sign off on and
Okay.
stuff like that. So that'll
Yeah.
come together kind of naturally as you
Okay.
start setting this up.
All right.
I would check with Kate about the requirements for a regular meeting versus a special meeting. It'd probably be
It
all
has to be
special
special.
meetings
Yeah,
right
just
now.
miss the deadline.
The reason, because you don't have, to have a regular meeting, you have to submit a schedule to the town clerk, 30 days.
You have to do it before January 31st, will be special meetings.
Yeah. You can't do it before 30.
You have to do it by January 31st, which we haven't done, so
it'll
will
have to
be special meetings
for
from
the
here on
rest.
out.
Yep, so it'll be all special meetings. The only distinction between a special and regular meeting is you can't, on a special meeting, you can't change your agenda
It's painful.
on a special meeting.
And you can't add to it.
You can't add to it.
So you just need to know
But if you
what you're
look,
gonna
if
do.
you look at our sample of our agenda, at the bottom of every agenda, it said, any other matters to discuss, that's sort of the open.
Right, the wild card. Yeah.
We learned that
There's a
from
little
Kate.
different in the private sector. Hey, can we get together day after tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but as small groups, you can do that anytime you want.
Right. Okay.
I certainly appreciate all the information. You guys
Yeah.
did
It's an awful
All
lot.
right, well, let me get some, I mean,
a lot of work to put it together, so thank you.
and then just back to the ex officio members.
I'll
What's
give you
the
a list.
best way to get a communication out to those people to try to, who reaches out to them?
You
Well,
do,
you do.
you do, the chair.
I will, oh, okay. Hi, you
But
guys
this is
don't know
where,
me from
this
a
is
hole
where
in the-
Linda and Jill, they have all their, she'll set up the sheet that has all their Darien.gov emails and stuff like that.
Yeah, that'll be all on the contact sheets.
Okay.
Realistically, how soon can we hire this consultant?
As soon as you want to interview them.
It feels like a
That
top
number
priority,
one.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
Well, we started by getting appropriation from the Board of Finance. They had an extra amount of money to give us to start. Or you can get an RTM resolution to get some money so you can, but you don't have to pay these guys right away anyway. You know.
What is it, what are we talking about for cost?
Well, I mean, we have a proposal right now, which I just got this afternoon, which I'd forward over to you, but I just haven't even looked at it yet, for $5,000 to do the state grant work. So that's not a lot of money.
No, I don't think that'll be a problem. The Board of Finance has a contingency account that's used for emergency, short-term.
And that's what we did last time.
Type things, and typically it gets replenished at in the next budget cycle anyway, and there's plenty of money in that account to do that.
Well, we did that, David, the last time. John Zagrodsky was on the committee. He was the Board of Finance representative. He said, I've got some money here to get you guys started before we get the appropriation, the initial appropriation. So just check who everyone's.
I'll reach out to Jim.
Okay.
So much.
Yeah.
We had.
That's the AP proposal, right?
The architect.
I'm sorry?
That's AP?
What?
The AP, was that the AP proposal, the 5,000?
That was
O&G.
Oh, gee, sorry.
No, I just got it this afternoon. I haven't even looked at it. I was gonna give it over to Monica.
Which was in line with Collier's prices.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess my thinking is, let's read this stuff and I'll reach out to the group and try to find some time that works. And I guess we'll copy everybody and try to get together as soon as we can that works for everybody.
Yeah. Is there
Right.
any requirement or preference of using personal email versus the town email that we have?
Town email.
You should use, I strongly recommend you use your town email.
Yeah, if you use your personal email and it's FOIA, then, you know, your entire personal email is subject to FOIA. So use
Town
your
email only.
Yeah.
And now texting is under FOIA too.
Yeah,
Interesting, okay.
better to communicate.
Yeah, so then I guess just the contact list is gonna be a somewhat high priority.
She should have that for you in a day.
Probably an email that Linda sent out, I think.
Yeah,
that
if you just
everybody's
reply
on.
all to that. we could
Yeah,
probably-
but yeah, it's,
I think that has all our
I assume that did have everybody in this room on it.
She has ours.
I'll double check. Okay.
One more quick question about, you know, the ex officio versus members of the committee. So did you find, you know, again, there's people from all different bodies ultimately with different authority. Did you find that, you know, what was your most effective way of making sure that everything was clear in terms of who was doing what and how we were supporting each other? Did it really come out through conversation at the committee meetings? You know, again, we're the decision-making body, but there's a lot of different people who support this committee in different ways.
Right. Well, I'm trying to think if we had a subgroup meeting, and let's say we had a subgroup meeting and Mike was there.
Yeah.
We'd all come back and we report back to the committee, well, here's what we decided to do.
Yeah.
And here's why, Mike's recommendation, whatever. I don't remember ever having a problem with ex officio members
No, I'm just-
running off.
It's more about where they fit into the process, like
Yeah.
Luke and Mike and Katie took the whole cafeteria and green initiative and
Okay.
all, they just took it and run with it, and
Okay.
then just came back.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Randy
Luke got
took-
a lot more involved
Yeah.
with the furniture than I did, because
Right.
that's
Yeah.
more his stuff,
Got
not
it.
mine.
Got it.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
And Randy just ran with, you know, Jeremy Ginsburg and Ed and
Yeah.
traffic and policing and planning and zoning and
Yeah,
just
he-
brought it back to the table. And I will say too, your first meeting or your first one or two meetings, you should bring bring Jeremy over and have Jeremy sit down on the first meeting, head of planning and zoning.
He'll give you the idea of what you have to do for town purposes, for all the approvals you need.
He'll give you a write-up as to the whole process and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
bring Bob Bush, the fire marshal, over. Randy will give you the 4 or 5 key people.
You're allowed to move in with the TCO?
Pardon?
You're allowed to move in with the TCO? Okay, good.
So I guess before.
We're gonna need a motion to adjourn.
I guess before we
Yes.
leave, we need a motion to adjourn. Move, second? Second. All in favor? Second. Okay.
Hey, everybody.